Okay, preparing the stream.
I got it.
Awesome. You got it?
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Happy Art Break Day.
Yes.
Oh, there we are. Oh, great. Hi, guys. Okay, so welcome, beautiful people. I'd love for y'all to introduce yourself and what you're doing in the world, and then say one word. What does art mean to you?
Who's gonna start?
Diane, you go ahead.
All right. Diane Williams. I'm a Bay Area based artist. I'm a mixed media artist, actually, and I just retired from my day job a couple of years ago, so I'm pouring all my energy into art making and teaching art. And one word to describe what art means to me is prayer.
Beautiful.
Nice. Sharon, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Sharon Burton. I am a creativity coach and artist based in the Washington, D.C. area. And art means to me meditation.
Noelle.
Okay, I live actually now in Baltimore, but I'm originally French, as you probably can tell, and I spent 30 years in Los Angeles. And so I retired from my regular job, which was to be a film editor and filmmaker, and went back to school, got a degree in psychology, mythology, and now I'm an art therapist, basically doing painting for life. And with the COVID, I'm now doing it on Zoom. And surprisingly enough, I love it even on Zoom because we do a lot of sharing and create a new we space. And then everybody does what they want basically at home with the work that they have, with the paintings that they have. And then we again sort of convene together and share afterwards. So I'm pretty happy doing that. And what does art means to me, I would say healing.
Yeah. Shannon.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to see everyone. My name is Shannon. I am a sole proprietor, bootstrapping, public school art teacher. I own a business called Creative Flow. And my mission is to show people how they're creative, that they're creative, and ways for them to be creative. It's a muscle. And I help people strengthen their muscle through events and workshops and classes. And I also teach part-time for a public school in San Francisco. And my one word for art that I could connect to right now, or that I'm feeling in this moment, is power.
Ooh, nice. Beth.
Hi, everybody. My name is Beth Benson. I'm here in the Crestline Creatrix Matrix, which is a purpose-built eco-art sanctuary that offers artist in residencies for artists and writers and thinkers and busy moms and people who just need like 3 days to their own brain after living with way too many people for close quarters for a long time. And art means to me, it's life for me.
Yeah. Lauren, you want to answer that question?
Oh man. Gosh, yeah, that's a tough one to answer in one word. Gosh, I ask people all the time, and then I'm like, when right now, art for me at this moment is actually sort of breath, I would say.
Oh.
Art is breath. Art Break Day every year sort of re-energizes me and reminds me why I work so hard for something, because it reinvigorates my passion and makes me realize how important this conversation is, and the movement towards getting everyone to understand that they have an artist within them that needs to take an art break every day. So yeah, breath.
Nice.
Mm.
I think what I'm feeling right now, mine always changes, but right now from Art Break Day, I feel radiance. I think art is radiance, and it really shines what's within you out. That's really for me, that's the process. You're bringing it out, so it's radiance.
Gosh, so some good words. I love it.
Mm.
Thank you everybody for being here and taking the time to have this conversation with us. Today we wanted to talk about how art helps us cope. So if you wanted to share a personal story, a professional story, or just a philosophy that you have about art and coping, we'd love to just kind of dive deep into that subject today. So whoever wants to, it's a big question.
Whoever wants to dive in.
Dive deep into that and tell us. Yeah.
I'll stay with that idea that art is life, and my JFK experience, where we earned our master's degrees, many of us on this panel, was really about suicide intervention and how to interrupt the desire to opt out of life. And so in this way, in all the ways that art lends itself to life, one can go through a series of alchemical processes and allow whatever needs to shed, to leave, and let whatever is still alive and wants expression and wants to be in the world to kind of get all that other stuff off it and live. And so just to start at the deep end of the the Pacific Ocean, where many people, still every 10 days still on the Golden Gate Bridge, someone jumps. So it really is life. It really is a place or a way to express to make an opening, to express what can still live and grow. And so that's my commitment to using art to transform those feelings and give people back the rest of what's possible.
It reminds me of another word, and that would be presence. Because I think when you love someone who is close to suicide, your being there and present for the person can make the difference between life and death for them. And I found so often in life that I am somewhere physically, but I'm not really present. Now, in the art making process, I'm so present. And I think athletes know this as the zone, but artists know it as presence.
Or flow, right? Creative flow.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And my own experience this winters, especially since COVID started, it forced me to do the teaching on Zoom. And so I was very surprised in the first place, that people had no problem painting on Zoom, and it created a space where we were building a community and people were really resonating off of each other. And that became a big part of the healing, self-transforming, awakening. And it actually opened me up to the idea of intentionally creating the we space, which I discover now is like a big movement. And I think there is a lot to be explored on that level, because the old way was art as your solo work. But and I was very much of a solo kind of a person, but I'm discovering now that we need to work together, and there is, more to be done as a group. And as we are like talking about the zone, the flow, the presence, the meditation, all of that is part of the group work, and it reinforces each other. And I've been having a great time with it, and I've sort of be grateful for COVID who opened up a door for me.
You know, I agree. I was surprised how interesting Zoom classes really are. And I would have never imagined myself teaching classes on Zoom. And I also love it because it gives us the ability to connect with people all over the world. We're not limited by location. Also, there are a lot of people that have physical limitations, and Zoom allows them to connect from the comfort of their chair. Now, Noelle, are they actually doing the paintings on Zoom? Because for me, I just more or less meet with the people. I'll do a little teaching with them and we talk together. They do their work independently and then we share it together online.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we do as well. You know, it's kind of a 2-hour schedule, but we end up doing more like 3 hours. So the first half hour, which is supposed to be check-in, and that became like so much the part I think that the people love the most, you know, so they have an opportunity to really share very deeply their biggest problems of the moment, you know, and doing it with a sense of presence, so always. And also we do meditation, but the sharing and the being able to express yourself and have people really listen deeply without ever criticizing, you know, being supportive and having that kind of a resonance with each other become almost, you know, the most important part of the session. And then yes, they go for an hour in their own studio, whatever they have they use, because what we do is not about creating a product, it's all about process. So I tell them, you know, in my studio this is how I do it, but then you figure it out yourself, and they have no problem. It's amazing also how it opened up, you know. Some people were working with me in the studio with a certain brush and paint and paper and everything, and they had come to a certain style, and then when they go home they use different things. They create their own style. Amazingly enough, those are not artists who consider themselves artists. Everybody is an artist, but you know, they are not professional artists. And from day one, they find their own style. And I can tell you, you can send me a picture of any of them without me knowing where it comes from. I will tell you, oh, this is Mary, this is John.
Oh, yeah.
I found a really cool quote that kind of weaves this together. It says, when words and data fail to foster empathy, visual arts can be an effective tool for making connection with others. That's from Carrie Anderson, right?
Yeah, it feels like it's basically, when I'm thinking of these Zoom classes, it's almost like art was the excuse to get together in order to be open enough to talk about how you're really feeling. And of course, I would argue endlessly that art only facilitates that more aggressively, but it's almost like people needed the excuse. Oh, I got to go to this art class. And then they can just, oh, by the way, I'm dealing with all of this stuff right now, and I need someone to listen to me. And you have this group listening to you. And that's also open to that.
See, we listen to each other verbally, but by looking at each other's artwork, we listen on a different level, because many people can't express themselves verbally, and that's why they're expressing themselves through art. A lot of times people looking at their own artwork will be brought to tears because they realize how deep they've gone into the process.
So true.
Yeah, very interesting also, because talking about the flow of creativity and art allowing us to kind of go beyond the thinking. And I really emphasize, you know, let go of control. And that allows people to really kind of tap into their subconscious, and they will do things as they do it. You know, I say work with passion, don't think about the meaning or anything like this when you do the work. And so they really do it, you know, and they don't know exactly what they are doing when they are doing it. But then when we share the paintings afterward, it comes up to the surface, you know, how much they have expressed even deeper than they thought. And then how much everybody is sort of relating to everybody. Sometimes they have the same motif on different paintings, you know. So it's another place where we tap into a deeper nature with art.
Shannon, how is that happening for your students? Sharon, for your clients? What do you notice?
I don't
Who
know.
are you asking,
You
Jen?
want to go?
Okay.
Who were you asking? Were you asking me?
Yes, Sharon.
Oh, okay. Well, it's sort of an interesting mixed bag. Today I hosted an art break, and it was very interesting. It was my first time actually doing sort of a co-working, co-creating kind of space, which um, I kind of wanted to try out to see if that's something I want to do down the road on a regular basis. I know a lot of art folks such as yourselves are doing that, and some creativity coaches are doing that. So it was sort of an experiment. I think um, if I really look at today's experience, it was interesting to see how there was one participant, for example, that I can tell that she is fairly isolated wherever she is. I think she's a single mom. And I can tell how she really got juiced by the connection of all of us. And everyone had their camera on, which was great. Um, and there was another artist that I know, I think she wasn't sure how this worked, had never done that kind of thing before, but she knew me. So she participated. And I think it was sort of an aha moment for her. I think a lot of times when we're in this kind of environment, even though some artists and creative types, aren't comfortable with it. It was interesting when I invited one artist. He was like, I just can't imagine creating in this kind of thing. I just think it's unnatural. And I'm like, okay, well, might be this way for a while if you want to connect with me. But I think for the most part, having also been a part of other people's groups, in that same vein, it's really a magical experience. I think when we connect with other creatives and we talk about our work and we talk about who we are, and we talk a little bit, like I was sharing some of the collages I was making. So it was interesting that some people got ideals from what I was doing. I'm a collage artist anyway, but I was using that as my little activity for today, which was really great. I think Zoom has been a great platform to use. I've been using Zoom for a lot of more creative conversations based on some of the work of, I'm actually finishing up The Listening Path by Julia Cameron, her newest book. And I did a 7 week course. So our last day is next week. And that's been interesting to talk about creativity and what we're doing to enhance it. I usually do Artist Way courses. So that's been, that's been always a rich conversation based on some of the exercises that Julia suggests. So I think, I think that in some ways it brings us closer. It brings us to new audiences, new people. I like it because of that. I had someone from Canada on the thing today. That doesn't normally happen. Someone from Miami. And so, when I look at that and I look at some of the connections I've even personally made as an artist, one of my clients actually that I worked with, who was based in Portland, Oregon, we developed a relationship that we started doing art projects where she'll do one piece and then she'll send it to me and I'll finish it, vice versa. So that's been a wonderful thing. Last year during the break into COVID, a good friend of mine who is big in art therapy movement did sort of this exchange with all of us, you know, that wanted to participate, where we made postcards and sent it to each other. So, you know, it's a wonderful thing. You know, I think I drew this card today. I don't have it in front of me, called, it's part of the Creativity Oracle. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. I'm into Oracle cards, so I'm always pulling stuff during my session. And the card was Worry. That was the name of it. And then it talked about basically worry is kind of based on our projecting into the future something that most likely is not going to happen, or at least not happen the way that we think it might happen. And we all kind of thought, well, that's quite an appropriate card, you know, because we're dealing with natural disasters, we're dealing with this COVID, we're dealing with, you know, some, you know, unrest in different parts of the world, as well as in our country. And, you know, I was sort of, and what I do when I pull cards, and I do it with my clients, and even with this group, I try to give them a little bit of coaching along with that type, with whatever the card is. And I said, you know, in a sense, that artist kind of keeps us in the present. And I think, Diane, you mentioned presence. It keeps you focused on the here and now. And when I think of meditation, I still think of it the same way. We're actually using art as a way to stay present. You know, it's all about the creative process at that moment. It's not about what happened yesterday or even 5 minutes ago. It's about keeping present until you feel that you're finished, or until you get to a place that you want to stop. And so it's more or less using art as a way of staying present and meditating and staying focused, instead of projecting anxiety into the future. And when we talk about, I think somebody mentioned trauma, you know, all of us, or many of us, have been through some kind of trauma in our lives. You know, it may not look like our friends coming from Afghanistan right now, but it, you know, we grew up in situations where there was some minor trauma or whatever that kind of came up, and that stays with us. And so when you're dealing with having a background of trauma, you tend to think ahead, because you're trying to find ways to protect yourself. You're trying to find ways to avoid any additional trauma or anything to happen. And I find that art is sort of that one thing that people that have traumatic kinds of experiences can focus on and grow with. So that's sort of my, I think I kind of went all around the world, but when, you know, when I think about technology, I think about COVID. It's frustrating because I wanted to do this event today with an art center, but, you know, with the variant, I wasn't very comfortable trying to, you know, push that, though I think they would have done it. But I think sometimes you just have to, you know, be responsible and offer other ways of doing it. And I do intend to do it in person, maybe next year, maybe 2022 that we can get it. But I think when you offer a Zoom, I think it does give people an opportunity to participate and to get to know people from across the world and create that creative community, which is like what we talked about today, the theme that you have, you know, make art with the world. And so that, to me, is one of the best ways to make art with the world and to connect with other people. And it's kind of a check-in, like, are you okay? You know, we're all kind of dealing with this environment the best way we know how. So, you know, I do think it's a way to check in without having to tell our whole story about whatever, but we're focusing on being present and with the art making. So,
all right, Shannon.
So much to synthesize. I'm really excited with everybody's ideas. It's just like my inner voice is like, yes. um, you know, in terms of coping, in terms of COVID, in terms of depression, in terms of mental health in general, I like to think about depression, or at least my experience with depression, as a record that just keeps playing. And like the needle moves, but you need you need an outside force to like take the needle off of the record. I mean, I'm dating myself, but I think we all know how a record works, even if you're young. And I feel I've experienced and I've witnessed in others that art is like the force that interrupts the record. Art can take the needle off of the record and flip the record or change the record. I think art has the capacity to get us thinking differently. And I think thinking differently is what gets many of us out of sort of like a depressive rut, And I think that COVID in some ways has sort of really flipped the record. It's come in, it's intervened, it's taken the needle off the record, and it's like snap.
How would you encourage or help someone who is in a depressive state? How would you motivate them to make art? I mean, I feel like depression that I have seen in other people can be so debilitating that they're prone on the sofa, and can you put a pencil in their hand and paper in front of them? Do you have any ideas?
I think one of the most empowering things that I hope to bring to others is for people to start thinking about art in many different ways, differently. I think when we think of art, we think of good and bad, right and wrong. We think of paintings in a museum. We think of like an exclusive club of right and wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think much of what everybody's been talking about here is that like one of the first steps for art making is just grounding and mindfulness. Some exercises I like to do is, find a certain color around the room. Notice textures in your environment. What can you do what's something in front of you that you can manipulate in your hands? So I don't know that, like getting someone to a table when they're feeling so depressed that they can't get off the couch is necessarily the first step.
Yeah.
But I do know that when I can get people to the table, or when I can get to the table or the chair or the whatever it is, it's the first step in interrupting, creating an interruption in sort of that cyclical, rutted thinking that we have. And Elliot Eisner, he is like one of the first people to coin art education. I don't know that we can really believe that, but that's what he's noted for. And he has a quote that I like to put in my signature line of my art education emails. And that is, the arts make vivid the fact that words do not, in their literal form or number, exhaust what we can know. And so I think one of the most empowering parts of art is that, we don't necessarily need words to explain what we're feeling. And we can show what we're feeling through like a brush stroke or through color. And sometimes when we abstract what we're feeling, we also interrupt our like rutted record thoughts. And so I think my job or my mission is to show people that art isn't just one thing, that art is all around us, that we are art. and that we all have the capacity to make art with whatever we have in front of us. And I think that when we can shift our thinking and our awareness for what art is, we can remove like the canon of what art is, we open the door and the windows for so many people to see themselves as artists and then to feel empowered to start creating.
Love your
And
idea of, just talking to someone and look around the room and what colors do you notice and what textures, which can really begin to shift that record needle. I was working with a woman yesterday. She called me and she told me, she's an older woman, I can't find myself. I'm lost. I can't do art. I can't write. I'm lost. So what I did was, this was all on Zoom too. I found a YouTube video of chimes, wind chimes, and I had her listen to the wind chimes, and I did get her to take a pencil and paper, and I had her draw the sound of the wind chimes. And soon we shifted to the ocean, and she was drawing the ocean and drawing herself in the ocean. And at the beginning of the conversation, her eyes looked really critical to me. I was afraid with her eyes. I didn't like what I saw, but she transformed. And by the end of the hour, her eyes she was embodied again.
Wow.
And so I felt that the wind chimes might be the way in, and it seemed to work.
When I worked with the children at Lincoln Child Center, and they're emotionally abused and traumatized, they were all spectrums of depression, anxiety, and they what I did with them was, it was abstract painting. Then that really lifted the needle, because we didn't have to draw anything like that. They were just doing Jackson Pollock, they were just doing whatever they wanted, and they could be as messy as they wanted. And it really, like, they called my room the calm room. This was the safe house of everything. And that was it. It was like, just express yourself. And the kids would leave the room. They'd come in, you could see them, like, they might have been restrained or whatever, really like agitated, and they would leave, blissed out. Elizabeth witnessed that.
It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And the space that art offers is that any of those movements, right? If you want to hit something, hit it with a paintbrush, or if you want to rip apart a canvas, or you want to, like, if there's an expression that's not allowed, that's the part. Like, when we create these big fences that don't let us be how we really are feeling, then it's too tight, it's too much. But if you can break that open in any kind of way, and art gives you that opportunity, if it's clay, if it's paint, if it's ripping and tearing, if it's collage, if it's, all of these things, finding objects, throwing, with
breaking.
Yeah, with the power and force of it all. And calligraphy, the ancient art of calligraphy with big brushes gives you that impact of your humanity on the page. And that's that space, right, where the page is talking back to you. It's really like, if you can get to the blank page, the life will come through that back into you. And that's like very different than like looking at my emotions, which I also love, right? That's my stuff. But there's a communion that's possible that's so much bigger than my stuff. And that's the part that I think connects all of us. And then this whole Art Break Day around the world, like, people get this hit of wonderful, and technology allows for us to connect inside each other's studios. We're in each other's living rooms or back bedrooms, or like, this is a place we rarely get to in life, right? But this collapsing of social structure in such a way that we can be the level of real that we are, makeup lists or however it is that we're showing up. There's a muscle to show up. There's a desire to be seen and to see one another. And then there's this space that art gives us for full expression of our humanity. And that if we can stay in that and not make ourselves weird, bad, or wrong, along the way where we shut down and get quiet and think we can't pick up a crayon or take an art break. Like that is a place, that's a thing we don't need in our heads or our bodies or in humanity anymore. That's what twerks us in such a way that we can't see the vulnerability and truth in one another and respect it and honor it as human. And so art gives us back our humanity, I think.
I agree. This morning I said it's either expression or repression. You know what I mean? And you gotta express, otherwise you're gonna repress and then implode.
I wanted to piggyback off of what Beth said a minute ago, back to today's event, because it was just profound for me on just so many different levels. This was one of the first Zoom events that I did where people didn't hide their background, you know, like sometimes they have the artificial background. And I thought it didn't dawn on me until Beth was talking about that, about people sharing where they are and who they are. And I think the people that were in this particular session, they were just like, this is where I am. One person was actually working in their bedroom. They had all their collage stuff and you could see the bed behind her. And she was just, because at first I wasn't sure what she was doing. And I was like, okay, is this performance art? Or, you know, be open for that. But she was putting all these different images on her bed. And she was explaining that she was working on a huge poster board to create this collage. And so I got it, you know, that she needed something large that she could put it on, but she was showing us the pieces and she would lift it up and explain. And I was like, wow, you know, people were feeling comfortable being real. And I think I'm hoping that continues with people. There's nothing wrong with the artificial background because sometimes you need that, you know, depending on who you're talking to. But for artists that never met each other to feel that comfortable to not only create, but to be comfortable with their space. I just thought that was kind of profound. And I didn't really think about that until Beth was kind of talking that way. So I just thought there's something.
Sharon, I'm wondering if, do you think, and anyone else who wants to chime in, because so art has this way of when you're in the midst of it, you can talk about really deep things, right? When midst of making art, if you can get people around a table. Do you think that Zoom adds another layer to that where you're not even aware of how vulnerable you're willing to be, just because of the fact that there's a screen separating you? Because you're right, Beth, nobody comes into my bedroom and you're in my bedroom right now. Because it's like, honestly, it's the most unkempt place in my house because I just closed the door and I'm not having any company right now because I have 3 kids under the age of 9. And so nobody's in my house. And you are. So that's a really good point. And I'm wondering if, you know, like Noelle was saying, COVID was a gift, right? And I like that perspective because it's like, what can we get from this that transforms the world in a positive way? What can we learn from it? What can we change personally about it? And how can we progress in a positive way from it, right? Let's not just focus on the horribleness that is it. I mean, let's not back away from that. And we as artists would never do that. We're very open to that, but let's also go to the other side of it and say, well, what can we do in a positive way? What can we learn from this? You know, what can we glean from this opportunity? Let's look at the opportunity of it now. And I feel like that's where this conversation is going. And I think that's great because it could be a powerful thing, and it already is, right? Because Art Break Day, we're already like, well, maybe we need to have 2 events every year and event focused on talking about it like we are right now.
I just connected with Otto Scharmer. Are you aware of him? No. He's a professor at MIT, and somebody pointed him to me, and I had been sort of seeing him here and there, or articles about him, but not really paying attention. And then now I focused on what he's doing, and it's quite amazing. Talking about looking at COVID in a positive way, he says, well, everybody sort of agrees. COVID sort of brought up the idea that we are all interconnected, everybody gets contagious and blah, blah, blah. So we know that much. But then he connected that with the idea that, hey, now that we are sensitive to our interconnectedness, we also have opened up our heart and becoming more empathic, and if the Black Lives Matter sort of erupt in the middle of the COVID, it's not maybe an accident. And then also on the other hand, there is the counterpart, then there are the people who are like, oh no, I want to hold on to my privilege. This interconnectedness is, I want none of that. And then you have the white supremacist, Republican movement, which also might not be an accident that it comes just right at this moment. So I thought that was pretty interesting how it connected those three things together.
I think, Noelle, you make a couple good points about that, because I do think COVID has made us kind of sit down. A lot of times these things have been going on, and people have just been too busy. We just don't, it's passing, you pass the television and something's on,
Right.
and you're on your way to something else. And you're, if you're on social media, you're just about promoting what you're doing, but COVID made us sit down and be like, wow, I didn't know all that was going on. And you either get on with whatever you feel, that you feel connected to. I think one of the things also in that, when we create communities via Zoom or whatever you use, Teams, or I don't know if anybody still uses Skype. I think going back to what I think it was Lauren that was asking the question, how do we keep this going? I think a part of it is finding ways within ourselves, if we're the hosts or if we're bringing people together, is making sure that we acknowledge the things that we've talked about, the trauma, the depression, all the different emotions that people are going through, and create safe communities where people of all backgrounds, races, whatever, can come together for that one thing, which is art. Where we make it a zone where it doesn't matter whether you believe in wearing masks or not, or you believe in vaccines or, whatever. It's not about any of those things. It's about creating community, a safe place, as well as putting boundaries on anything that would make someone feel uncomfortable. But I think it's about us setting the tone for safety and setting the tone to be present, as Diane had mentioned, meditation and whatever that we need to do to bring folks together and say, okay, this is a safe zone. This is about creativity. This is about sharing who we are expressing ourselves to be. And it's not about, as I think, was it Noelle or maybe Beth or somebody mentioned, whether you're a fine artist that's a professional artist or not. It's not about, we had somebody doing paint by numbers today, and, at first it was kind of odd. And then I thought, no, but that was her expression. And with the wording of my event, I said, whatever you want to create. And I said, that's cool. She felt comfortable. She could have been in a bunch of fine artists that have exhibited and talking about where their next show is and everything else. But she took a paint by number image and showed us her paints and was going for it and was going to gift it to someone who just had a baby. So, if and that was an indication, again, that we use language, that we use our empathetic selves. Artists tend to be empaths and compassionate. and being able to bring that energy to people to create safe spaces so we can grow these spaces.
So I have a question, spawning a question from me, Sharon. What do you think would happen? And I don't know that this is possible, but if you invited people and knew they had extreme viewpoints from one another, but you didn't tell anybody that, and you just told them, we're just going to make art together. Let's just hypothesize for a minute. What do you think would happen?
I personally think that, art is always a unifier, art and music, music brings folks together, that you wouldn't think would be together. I think art is the same. I think with careful facilitation, that might be a magical experience, because I think if people didn't really realize who people's background was and they just focused on their stuff, they would just be like today, just sharing ideas and, oh, that gave me an idea about doing this, that, and the other. And I think it would be something that a lot of us should, again, you have to be careful because some people are very into their ideology and it just seeps into everything they do.
Right.
But I think if it's facilitated well, it might be a magical experience and one worth duplicating if done properly.
There's some magic in Kaleo and Elise energy, who taught us Qigong and taught us art and taught us guided imagery and taught us no matter what frame of brain you enter the space in, if you hold a sacred container, if you put people back in their own bodies, if you give people access to their own creativity and a world of art supplies and freedom, that permission slip allows for the realignment inside the physical container of the individual in such a way that those things that are way far out on either end of any spectrum, they just get to come back into equilibrium inside the body. And when we do that, and then if we look with a symbolic overlay at what COVID is, it's a disease of the lungs. It's where grief lives in the body. We have a tremendous amount as humanity of stored grief that we haven't ever taken time out to deal with. And so we have these eruptions that that are just like tumors in the body, or, pus-filled, whatever, yucky, gross, that needs to blow up in order to get to heal. And I think that's in effect, kind of what this year and a half going on 2 years looks like it might be bringing us, is an opportunity for humanity to heal its behaviors in such a way that it can get its shit together around the environment. And that is, like, sorry for being so frank, but I think it's overly necessary that we do that at a very real level. We have to get our consumerism into some sense where we understand how those things that we buy get here and who has to do what to get them, and whether or not we want to continue to perpetuate that kind of terrible life for people who are creating the things that we can buy at the dollar store. I think that there has to be some real understanding. And if we can maybe get over our we're all human stuff and get to like that baseline, then maybe we can have an opportunity to think about what humanity is doing with the living earth in a different way than flying to Mars to find another planet to destroy.
Well, you made several points about the earth and the environment, and I just wanted to mention the fires that are going on in California, the floods in Louisiana, and the nature is really rising up and saying, hey, I'm tired of what you've been doing. I want you to stop and pay attention. And talking about kind of getting beyond our politics, our religion, and our differences. I have a cabin up in the Dixie Fire. I'm in the town, Greenville, but the whole town is gone. And I have a neighbor who is a very right-wing trumpeter Christian. I don't like it very much, right? During the fires, he rose up as a hero with, the things that he did to protect the forest, the community, people. And suddenly who he was, in my eyes, became very, very different than I had seen him before. And I realized our politics, our religion, and the things that we surround ourselves, we cloak ourselves in, they're like masks if we get to the heart of who we are. And these disasters, the disease, the virus, the fires, the floods, everything else is really forcing us to, kind of uncloak ourselves. So, and I hate to jump out, but I have an obligation I have to attend to.
No
So
problem.
I'm going to be jumping off the panel in a few minutes.
Thank
Well,
you
thank
so
you.
much, Diane, for all of your insight and joining the conversation. I can't stop talking yet, so I want to keep you all available, because this is such a really interesting conversation. Because when you talk about sort of shedding the mask and getting to who we really are, I think there's a lot going on in the world. Sharon, you mentioned Afghanistan. I think that is something I am personally dealing with right now in terms of coming to terms with who we are. Me personally, as an American, I'm dealing with that, and like what we do as America. And I just think that with art, I don't know, I'm seeing, because Lisa shared this art that's being made in Afghanistan currently, and you can see art. We have art in Oregon of someone who made reclaimed materials of a rising phoenix, because we had a huge fire that decimated tons of towns and people still have no place to live, right? Like and that is coping with your current situation, but also calling to people to pay attention at the same time. So like, what can we do as humans, right? Because on an individual, I would encourage you to make art about what you're talking about, that grief that you're carrying, right? And all of this stuff that happened, COVID, Black Lives Matter, everything, the environment, make it as an individual, but let's also come together as a community and really ingest what other people are trying to say to us with what they're doing, with the marches that are happening in Afghanistan, the Black Lives Matter movement, the environmental movement, any art you can get your hands on and look at and process is a powerful thing, because it's someone's voice and it's real, because art is never a lie.
True. Uh-oh, you're muted, Beth.
Art is never a lie. You can't make a line that's a lie. It's
Yeah.
not, it doesn't let you. Like that communion thing between you and the material and the surface that you're engaging with, or the things that you're using in your assemblage. Like, if there is a space, if there's a feeling one can allow oneself to hold long enough to pick up the brush and do the thing or make the assemblage, Guernica is possible, right? That level of art making that causes consciousness to happen in the presence of the work. And that's called for now. All of us as artists are called for that. All of us as human beings are called for, like what is the biggest thing inside of you to express? Because now is now. And I think, and people are 3 shots in and dying. People are in fires and their whole lives are being destroyed. People are underwater. People are in Afghanistan. People are in Palestine. People are in Israel. There's these consistent conflicts that the willingness to keep supporting the military industrial complex that makes all that shit happen, that energy and mind has an opportunity to be dismantled because of this space of taking time to think about, what are we really doing as human beings? Like, how does this world work for us and how does it not? And the work of the Pachamama Alliance is really spectacular at integrating all of these conversations in with an ecological understanding, such that you really have some choices, and choices to make powerfully and choices to make publicly about what you're going to participate in and what you're not going to participate in anymore. And I love the power of sitting down. I wished for police officers to stand aside or to join Black Lives Matter marches or to say, that's not me, and to demonstrate it in a real way. And that happens some, I think, in Oregon. And I think it's happening in different kinds of places. That space that Diane talked about with her neighbor who's all bumper sticker and, F-150 and big flag that scares me, scares the shit. But inside is a human being who really does love his community in some kind of actual way that has something to do with changing what's possible around what we conceive of as people. We are not red and blue people. We are not black and white people. We are so much more in the totality of our humanity. And to make a space where things can be presenced, heard, seen, respected, and then encountered, engaged with. Art gives us a way to do that doesn't have to hurt one another.
It reminds me of a quote that I posted on, I have two Instagrams, and I have my art one where I kind of share different things on that one. There was a quote by Toni Morrison, and a lot of her writing and a lot of her quotes actually, raise the ideal of the artist kind of leading the charge for a lot of what we're seeing now. And this quote really, really moved me. This is the time for every artist in every genre to do what he or she does loudly and consistently. It doesn't matter to me what your position is. You've got to keep asserting the complexity and the originality of life and the multiplicity of it and the facets of it. This is about being a complex human being in the world, not about finding a villain. This is no time for anything else other than the best that you've got. So I think when we think about all of the things that Lauren and Lisa have been leading as part of this Take an Art Break movement, and for people like ourselves that connect with artists and creatives and people that don't think they're either of those things, it's sort of kind of coming to that, creating opportunities for people to be in their full humanity, even if they're hurting, even if they're not showing their best selves, because I think all of us are reacting to, again, I think, about 80% of America has been traumatized. And we all show up a different way. And I think a lot of these movements and these actions is a part of that, addressing that. And a lot of it is really all down to fear, but that's a whole nother story. But just creating opportunities where people can say, okay, this is who I am. I'm a complex human being, but still I'm going to show up and use my creativity to express myself. And then for the most part, you're going to find that they're all going to have that common piece. Just like Diane said, we all still want healthy communities. We still want safe communities. We still want to protect our families and whatever, and really kind of honing in on that one thing that we have in common. And I think art is one of those fascinating ways that's overlooked. But I think having an event like this today, and for you all to do it for 11 years tells me that it might be slow, but it's moving. Because you would have gave up like 3 years ago, like, this ain't working. And, and at that time we were in person. you know, and here we are through COVID. This is your second virtual kind of event. You got us together. You know, some of us, we didn't know you maybe 11 years ago, but we're doing our thing in our communities and we're showing up today. So
for me, I think the new paradigm from talking, this conversation is the paradigm's here. The new paradigm is here, and it's really awakened. And it's really, yes, art is the unifier, and that's really, it's like during the plague, during COVID, and then we had Black Lives Matter protests, and in Santa Monica, they looted the whole downtown. It was destroyed. I don't know who did it, but you know, things were put on fire, but artists came in on the wooden boards and they drew murals. They created beauty. And there was one that just like, I was like, oh, that's it. It said there was the plague, it was a hand, and then there was the Renaissance. So for me, it was so beautiful. For me, that's really what COVID has done. It has put us on pause, and it's allowed this new paradigm to say, I'm here. And a lot of voices are speaking up now and they're being heard. So.
I too am really juiced by all of this. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say goodbye soon.
We should conclude.
But I think what Sharon, distilled for me is really at the heart of everything, which is fear. You know, there's love and fear. And I think humans have met fear with control. And then they've layered on systems with right and wrong rules that continue to move depending on who is in power, right? And then we see the results of capitalism and the patriarchy and white supremacy. And I think we all have that internalized record that we learn to play through varying places and people through our childhood of, this is what keeps me safe. This is what is right. Don't do this or else this will happen. And when you distill everything, at the root of it is fear. And for me, at least, what art does is helps me sit in a process of ambiguity, of gray, of all of the variants of gray, of the idea that there's not one right way to get to a destination. There are many ways to journey. And not to toot our horns, but to toot our horns. I think one of the most powerful ways to interrupt that poisonous record, one that comes from like in the industrialization, the factory model of education, where everybody sits in rows and there's like an obedience factor and there's a right answer and a wrong answer that you fill into a bubble chart. And then that bubble scantron tells you just how smart you are in accordance with basically white supremacy, right? Or how much adherence you are to that system of control. Is if we as a collective, as artists, can start playing the new record, disrupting that internalized soundtrack that so many of us have going on, which is, there's no right way to do this. The most impactful art you can make is that comes from you. Your art is never going to look like anybody else's. The art in museums were once so disruptive or so wrong in the system that they weren't recognized. And the more that we can guide people through like the studio habits of mind, which is all about process and all about exploration, I think the more we can help people transfer their skills to other areas of their life. Because I think that's one of the most powerful things about art for me is that, I've sat at the canvas and I've figured something out, or I've been in the dark room and I've gotten my film from the reel to developing to the solution to the print, is that when I'm met with difficult situations in my everyday life, I know that I have the capacity to think differently. And I know that I have the ability to sit there and be like, what would my artist brain, what's my creative inner voice thinking about this? Like, do I really agree with this? Or is this really the only way to do this? And I think that that's like the antidote to what's happening, on this poisonous, toxic, fear-ridden, patriarchal record that we're all playing, is sort of the transference of art into saying, like, I don't know that there's a right way to do this. And how can I practice it on the canvas? And then how can I move it into my everyday life? And I think that we have the opportunity to empower people to do that through just taking mini breaks during our day, to see that we have this like internal wellspring of creativity and art that we can draw upon, and we can change the record.
Super.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here. And I'm what I'm learning from this conversation, like you said, Sharon, we have been doing this for 11 years, and we see progression every year. And I'm hearing, I'm coming to the conclusion that we need to welcome everybody to we actually need to convince everybody to make their art and to show it, because they will not only learn something about themselves while during that process, they will show their, you know what I mean? They'll be able to show their true selves in a way that's possibly more approachable. And we might all find some sort of common ground if we can all just take an art break together. So I will continue that mission to get everybody.
All right, we're on for another decade. Noelle just wants to share something, if possible. Do you want to screen share if she has an ongoing? Do you need to leave, Shannon? Or
thank you, Shannon.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We could talk for hours and hours.
Okay. You have to, so I guess, give me the possibility to share, I guess.
Yeah. I think can you press screen share? Is that possible?
Yeah, there's a green thing that says share screen at the bottom of your screen.
I know, but it tells me host as disabled participant. So you have to enable the participant.
Oh, okay. 1 second. Let's see.
So like allow multiple.
Let's see. Okay, there we go. Got it. You're in like Flynn.
Okay, here it goes.
There's an elephant.
Yeah, no, that's not what I wanted to share. This is the thing I wanted to share, which is the workshop I am doing, and my email is here, and I would love to keep communicating with everyone who is interested, because we are doing sort of very similar work. So it's pretty easy to remember. Is my name noelimperato@gmail.com.
All right.
I will, yeah, I'll put everybody's information in the descriptions so that you guys can connect with each other. We can stay connected, and anyone who sees the video and wants to connect with anybody can do so. So I will definitely share that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you all. This was an amazing conversation.
Thanks everybody.
What, are we ready to go? Well, I'll say
No,
goodbye.
yeah.
That was a great panel. Thank you. Very nice conversation, everybody. I definitely enjoyed it.
I want to say something about the role of technology to get us outside of the record player. Like, there is an opportunity there are two opportunities that I see technology offering every human being who has access to technology, right? So there's still some access issues around the world, in every neighborhood, in every country. So let me first presence that, and then let me say that when we layer technology in, that truly democratic, without having that be political in any kind of way, that sense that humanity gets to show up and say what it means, if we can keep the the voice pure, the art honest, right? And I don't, again, like these words are difficult, but what I mean is when human hearts get to open to one another through authentic expression, there isn't a record we're playing anymore. There's a space beyond what we've learned and made up about one another in such a way that we can re-enter the dance or the drum beat or our own mark making or our own connection experience that feels real, like that drops all the artifice, like faster than any of this like deconstruction or like if I sit next to someone I've never met and we have a real conversation about something that's real to one of us, the other one of us has an opportunity to feel that beyond filters, like without filters, without bumper stickers in the way, like without, in the authenticity of truth. And that's where art is. There's no record needle on the record. There's a rhythm and there's a drum beat and there's a way to jam and there's a new thing being co-created in real time, in reality.
It hasn't been made yet. It hasn't been made yet, and you get to make it together. And I think Sharon talked about everybody carrying trauma with them. I would say 100% of people experience trauma. 100%. I wouldn't even go with 80. I would say 100%. They, but they, yeah.
Everybody was born. There was something.
I would argue they're also carrying experience with them, and that's what you're alluding to, Beth. And if we can shift people's experiences to experience something together, you change people's lives. A lot of the reason a lot of people are not connected or they have a misunderstanding of someone, and I'm not saying all, because 25% of people are unreachable. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who we can still reach. It's because they have not had an experience together yet. And if we can just remove the yet and get them to have an experience together, they will connect. And the way to do that is art. There's no other way. You can't, there's no other way.
So we do that as Art Break Day.
and technology allows us to share the art we're making. Like if I can draw my picture, I can take my picture, I can put my picture in the world, and people can then open their hearts and respond if they choose to, any way they want to. But that connection happens through the art medium instead of my skin or my humanity or the projections onto which we throw shit as people. Like there's a thing art can do that just opens you wide up to what truth feels like.
It opens the heart.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
Before we close, Beth, I want to see that t-shirt because
well, okay. It's my daughter's t-shirt.
I love it. I'm just curious about that design on it.
Beautiful.
She's at needsartsupplies.com.
Oh.
All right.
Very nice.
Beautiful. I'm just going to stop the live stream. Happy Art Break Day.